about what you.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're recording it,
Yeah.
okay, if that's okay. So the mental consciousness watches the other senses. So if you let go of your attention, the eye, ear, nose, and taste, and then just focus on what the body consciousness is recognizing, the feeling of the air coming in and the air coming out, and then even let go of your focus on the body consciousness, just what the mental consciousness is aware of as you're watching the breathing.
So I guess I find it hard to separate that, but it seems like the mental consciousness is always going, whether it's also a physical, tactile consciousness.
Yeah, so the example I give sometime of a turtle or a tortoise, withdrawing its legs and head into the shell. It's kind of like withdrawing your attention away from the five senses. But if you're watching the breathing, you still have a little sensation of the body consciousness, but mainly it's your mind thinking about it, thinking, oh, this is an inhalation. So it's mainly mind, right? The body consciousness doesn't think this is an inhalation or an exhalation, right? Doesn't know that. So it's the mental consciousness that's thinking that, oh, now it's just coming to the end. It's just changing direction. Now it's going out. This is the first exhalation. Now it's just changing direction. This is the second inhalation, the second exhalation, like that. So that's more or less what I mean by that. Does that help a little?
Yeah. I guess I don't separate them. Yeah. And, I never think of them. I always think of that mental consciousness is always going on, and also the regular physical consciousness. So
you can be distracted easily by your eyes and ears if there's someone mowing the lawn, or, if there's like my story of the crickets. I told you about
yes.
House, right? The ear consciousness.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with being distracted.
Yes. Okay. Hi, Michael. I see you there. And Brian. So.
Good evening, Venerable.
Good evening. So, Michael, I'm not sure if Paul Hackett and his partner will attend. They have been coming most of the time, but he's the one to contact. You might send a message to him. He's the one that lives with Geshe Damcho.
Yeah, thank you.
And Charlottesville. That's what I was trying to think of, Charlottesville for a long time.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got enough people here. Let's begin with a little meditation and setting motivation. As always, sit comfortably. I have to remember to put my legs. Okay. So before we put the prayer up, we're going to just do we're going to do some meditation first. Okay. So relax your body, relax your mind, and place your mindfulness. The mindfulness here is a mental faculty on the breathing in front. And as you've been practicing for some time, you may have reached already a little bit of quietness just doing that. Now bring your attention to the more subtle object of your mental consciousness itself, rather than watching the breathing. Be aware of the contents of the mind, like looking inward. If you can recall the spaciousness that we've been talking about, the clear light nature of the mind, as a remembering consciousness, bring that forth. If not, just notice in your mind that thoughts have a certain tenacity if you focus on them. Try to turn your attention away from them, back thinking, what is the consciousness that's knowing these thoughts, within which these thoughts are emerging? Focus on the subject mind rather than the object thoughts. Doesn't have a shape or color. It's something that's known by wisdom. Doesn't have a particular appearance. But to your wisdom, there is a kind of appearance, a mental image of it that you're developing, of just vacuity, the lack of obstructing contact. It's within this clear light nature of the mind that you can develop all virtuous qualities, diminish and eventually cease all faults of the mind. Remembering how fortunate we are to have this opportunity to recognize this, what is sometimes referred to as the conventional Buddha nature, Buddha potential, Buddha lineage. This is because we have right now a life as a human, interest in the Dharma, having met the teachings and have support of spiritual friends and so forth, a life of leisure and endowment, which is very rare. And highly meaningful. We can use it for worldly aims, pursuing the 8 worldly concerns of pleasure and possessions and power and hearing sweet ego-pleasing words like I love you and so forth. But we have to leave this life, and so those aims are relatively meaningless. We can, however, use this life to develop empathy and compassion for others, concern for others rather than ourselves, a compassion for them, having understood the shortcomings of cyclic existence, developing renunciation, we can strive, motivated by compassion, for full enlightenment for the welfare of others, develop bodhicitta. We can develop the wisdom of emptiness, or leave imprints in our mind to easily realize it in the future. I think I'm going to participate in this class today, this afternoon, this evening, with an intention to develop that compassionate attitude of bodhicitta, especially the wish to attain enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings, meditating on the stages of the path in this prayer by the first Panchen Lama, to familiarize with the stages to develop all the necessary factors to achieve that. I'm going to participate in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. That's a very virtuous motivation, if we can actually have that thought, even with effort, thinking of the welfare of others more than oneself. So raise yourself from that. Bring your attention to the here and now, present. And yeah. So good to see all of you. Paul and Kim, or Jennifer, rather, Kim. And so you're sitting right next, on my screen, you're sitting right next to Michael Wick, who wants to find out some information about Geshe Damsho, so you two communicate later. He was wondering what happened to him. So before we start, any questions, comments? Did you have a good Sakadawa yesterday, full moon? I didn't see the blood moon. I didn't see the eclipse, anything. I was getting an eye exam, so. Okay. So, Sunny, I don't think we have to put up the other prayers. We set a motivation. Implicit in that was some sense of refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, because we're studying the Buddha's teachings. Buddha's considered the founder of the teachings, the Dharma, the expositor, and the Dharma is, in a sense, the actual refuge, that which protects us from suffering, which is, even understanding impermanence, as we've said before, can protect you in so many ways. Even understanding the rarity and value of a life of leisure and endowment can protect you from suffering. When you think, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to say, if you think each one of the freedoms and endowments, we say 8 freedoms and 10 endowments or 10 richnesses, each one of them is in a sense more valuable than a universe full of wish-fulfilling gems. You might say, oh, come on. More valuable than $1 trillion, because with $1 trillion or more, You can find some kind of benefit now, maybe, buy yourself companions and friends and, luxury, but that won't ensure your future rebirths. That won't protect you from falling into the lower realms. But with a life of leisure and endowment, any one of those freedoms allows you to produce the causes for future happiness like that. So if someone shortchanges you in the taxi cab, or whatever sort of tragedy befalls you, you can think, that's nothing. I've got something more valuable than $1 trillion. So you give the $50 bill and he gives you change for a 5 or something like that, or you give a $100 bill, he gives you change for a 10, and he claims it wasn't 100, it was a 10. Okay, doesn't matter. I've got to say, that's okay. So, and of course the Sangha, like you are the Sangha of this group, the spiritual community that help us actualize the teachings. So we're talking about this incredible Lanrim prayer at the end of the Guru Puja. And last time we got up to, I think we just began with the Nutra Dikpe Debu Yongkangte, when the vessel world and the inhabitants therein are filled with the fruits of past negative karma. Is that more or less where we were?
96. Yeah.
Okay. So let me mention a little bit more of that from the commentary by Mutru Dharmabhadra. Is it what I'm using? Mutru Dharmabhadra is one of the Galupa lamas. Maybe it's a couple century and a half or 2 centuries ago. One of the lineage lamas. So here we go, 7576. So when we divide up, when we say, when the vessel world and the inhabitants therein are filled with the results or the fruits of negativity, dikpa. Dikpa usually means sin, you could say sin. And undesired suffering falls like rain, which sounds oftentimes when one morning you wake up and you hear that grand jury has been placed, and you're feeling, oh, the world is, everything's good, and then you hear that, oh, maybe not, maybe he's going to escape. Undesired sufferings falling like rain. Even if it falls like rain, grant me blessings to learn to take these adverse conditions, that is the suffering, into the path, to use them, to utilize them, which is one of the essential ingredients of the training of the mind. You may have heard the Tibetan word lojong, mind training. In this case, this is what we might call taking adverse conditions into the path through contemplation. Later, we'll see how to take the adverse conditions into the path by means of activity, what are called the 4 activities and so forth. So even if the environment and beings therein are filled with the fruits of negative karma and unwished for sufferings pour down like rain, I seek your blessings to take these miserable conditions, you can say miserable conditions, adverse conditions, as a path, taking them into the path, transforming them into the path by seeing them as causes to exhaust the results of negative karma. Lenin Debu Sebe Gyurtonge. Doesn't say my negative karma in the text. It says seeing them as the result of, I seek your blessings by seeing them as causes to exhaust the results of negative karma. So you might say, how could you be exhausting anyone else's negative karma? Well, one begins by thinking, this is okay, because the experience of this now means that negative karma that I've accumulated in the past is ripening. There's no way I could experience the suffering now unless I'd created the karma for it in the past. And going beyond that, as I mentioned last time, you take the opportunity of thinking, on top of my suffering, imagine that my experiencing this suffering in the vein of Tonglen, like we talked about in the previous verse, giving and taking. Imagine that the negative suffering of all sentient beings is on top of my suffering, is being exhausted by this. I'm going to take that upon myself. So as an expression I've used a couple of times from my childhood, a double whammy. You know, you're not only exhausting the results of your own negative karma, but you're exhausting the results of imagining that you are taking on their suffering. Imagine that's being exhausted. You're, in a sense, you're dedicating, you're being patient with this suffering, creating virtuous karma, dedicating it in that way, thinking in that way, and in so doing, you create a karmic cause to be able to exhaust their suffering in the future. You might say, my experiencing of this headache is not eliminating anyone else's headache right now, but being patient with that and thinking, may this serve to exhaust the suffering of sentient beings. You make a karmic connection. It's like a prayer, dedication, that in the future, you will be able to exhaust the suffering of headaches and everything else of sentient beings, because you'll be developing bodhicitta and so forth. So that was the general outline. So here, in the text, it goes in a little more detail. So those of you who are you could take that. You could take that away now. That for a second. So you can see, I'd like to see whether people are following. Sunny, can you get rid of that prayer? You get rid of it. Now, that is to take it away. Okay, you're trying to find. Okay, so I'm not sure. You got it up there. There must be some way to take it away. Okay. There you go. So in the text, Untu Dharmabhadra becomes a little bit wonky here. So maybe it's worth even for those who are more casual observers. He says that if you were to categorize results, because it says the results of negative karma or effects of negative karma, there are 4 kinds of results that we talk about. In Tibetan, we say here he calls it dakpe wangi debu. Usually they just say dakpe debu, which means the environmental effect. Dakpe debu. That means when you create a negative karma with all of the limbs, you have a preparation, you recognize the negative action, you recognize what you want to do, you want to kill that person, you do it, the person dies, all of the different limbs of the action. When that's created, it can have 4 different results. The first of which is, you could say dakpe debu, or sovereign result, or environmental result. What it means is that let's say take murder or killing as an example. If you kill someone, the result will be that on the environment, when you're born again in the future, the majesty of the environment will be diminished. That is to say, you may be born in a place where there's a lot of dangerous things. Oh, no, sorry, excuse me. Let me give you the example that he's saying here. He's saying, for example, in terms of killing, the place in which you abide will have a diminishment of its majesty. So, say for instance, whereas other people may be experiencing a full crop, like when the harvest comes, have a great deal of crop, your own particular environmental effect will be that the place where you reside, there's not so much, fruit. There's not so much harvest, grain or whatever. There will be a depletion of natural resources in your place. It doesn't mean that everyone will experience it unless it's an environmental effect that's collective karma. Does that make sense? You following what I'm saying? Tell. Just want to look at some people's eyes. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I understood that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't picking on you in particular. I wanted to pick on someone. So, so that's the first effect, the environmental effect. So wherever we're reborn, there will be some kind of environment in some respect. Then the second effect is what's called the Nammingidebu in Tibetan, Vipaka, the maturation effect. That means, you might say, all of these are maturation, in a certain sense, maturation or ripening in negative karma. But here, Nammingidebu kind of means the full maturation, means that which throws you into a rebirth. Generally, you need you have to have a complete karma to create a karma that it will throw you into another rebirth. Sometimes if some limbs are missing, it will only give some of these results. So, for instance, with respect to killing, the result of karmic result, the maturation result of killing would be to be born in the hell realm, one of the hell realms. The hell realm's hot.
Not always.
Okay, good. There's someone has some, not always. There's also cold hells, and in the hot hells there are a whole variation of different experiences. In the cold hells, there's a whole range of experiences. There are some occasional hells and so forth. I was going to tell you a story, but I'll tell you later. So that's the second effect. So we have environmental effect, the maturation effect, which means that you'll be born in a realm. And then there are two other effects that fall under the category of effects that are similar to the cause. Sometimes in some elaborations, they just say there are three effects: the environmental effect, the maturation effect, and the effects similar to the cause, the results similar to the cause. But there are two kinds of that. One of them is similar to the cause as comes first here, as an activity. Say, for instance, if you kill this lifetime, you create a karmic instinct in your mind to want to kill again in the future. Especially if you kill, usually killing means voluntarily, because if you kill something involuntarily by accident, that doesn't create all of this panoply of results so strongly to throw you into another realm. But if you want to kill this lifetime and you perform that and you carry it out, you create the karmic instinct to be familiar with that, to want to do it again in the future, the habitual result. Right? That's the desire to kill again. So if you steal this lifetime, it will have certain environmental effects. The place where you have will be deprived of certain of many kind of resources and so forth, because you've taken the resources of others. When you're born, you can be born in any of the three lower realms. Usually stealing is not quite as severe as killing, depending on how much, how much you deprive people of. You could be born in hell, you could be born as a preta, a hungry ghost, or as an animal. But if you, when you are born, you'll have the tendency to want to take what doesn't belong to you, to steal. So that's called the effect similar to the cause as an activity, as an action. So there are two things in here, the effect similar to the cause. So the other kind of effect similar to the cause is similar to the cause as an experience. So for instance, Nongtongi Debu, the cause concordant with the experience, the effect similar to the experience, similar to the cause as an experience means that if you kill, let's say, in a future life, you will have a shortened life. There are people who look completely healthy, and they may be walking to the stove to make coffee, and they fall down with a brain aneurysm, or have a heart attack, or even not just sudden deaths like that. Your life will be shortened in some way as a result of having taken the lives of others. So when we're born, there is a certain lifespan that we have the capacity of living, generally, we say, from a Buddhist point of view. It's not a standard amount. Not everyone lives, not everyone starts out with the same capacity of life. Some people, because of creating virtue in past lives, might have the capacity of living very long. Some may have a shorter lifetime because of having killed in the past. Of course, you can die even for other reasons before that allotted, your maximum amount. You may run into other kinds of obstacles. So the effect similar to the cause as an experience is with respect to killing, is to have a short life and so forth. So the first one, the environmental effect, if you talk about that in the verse, it says nochu, when the environment and the contents, or the beings therein are filled with the fruits of negative karma. So the environment is the first result, the maturation, the environmental result. And the other three, the maturation results and the effects similar to the cause as an action, and the similar to the cause, the effects similar to the cause as an experience, are, the chu, Tibetan word chu, which means the essence, or that which is in the vessel. So you have a vessel and you have contents. You have the yogurt in the vessel, right? So the bowl is the in the environment. The chu is here. Here the chu means the sentient beings within. So, Nochu Digpe Debu, Kangne, having filled up the vessel world and the inhabitants therein with undesired suffering, while being undesired, they're still suffering, and it's falling like rain. grant me blessings to take these into the, in these adverse conditions into the path. So what he says here is, so in dependence on experiencing such suffering, the negative actions in former lifetimes are exhausted, are depleted. So you can think that, but in particular, this is what I was mentioning to you before. In particular, suffering, the experiencing of suffering like that, that all sentient beings are experiencing, limitless, numberless sentient beings. May all of those sufferings, may all of them ripen on top of my own suffering. And in that way, you create a much greater result, positive result, taking these adverse conditions into the path, not just thinking, okay, I'm free of that, but you're actually like the previous verse that had the 5 verses when we talked about Tonglen. May all the suffering of sentient beings ripen on me right now. Joining it with that, one has a much more virtuous result here, purifying negative karma like that. So please grant me blessings to be able to do that. So when we say this kind of meditation, as I've mentioned in all of the verses, you imagine, first of all, white light coming from the tree of assembled gurus, or if it's just not this tree like behind me of all the assembled merit field, imagine just from your guru or from the Buddha, Shakyamuni, white light coming, purifying all of the hindrances to you being able to do that. We probably have some hindrances right now to be able to do that. And then when you feel, okay, maybe you think, maybe I can do that, then the yellow golden light comes and brings the blessings to be able to not only eliminating the obstacles, but then bringing the blessings to be able to accomplish that. Okay. So that's one of the important elements of the training of the mind, how to transform adverse conditions into the path. And this is mainly through contemplation, right? Meditating, the way of thinking, through thinking or through contemplation. So then the next verse, as you have up there, verse 97. Dorna sangnen nangwa chisha yang. As FPMT phonetics, CCHHO. I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. Chukun ningpo togne nyamlengi jangchub semni pewe lamgirte ide bashe gumba jingilo. In short, sangnen nangwa chishar yang. Chishar means whatever. Nangwa chishar, whatever appearance arises. Nangwa kind of means appearance, good or bad appearance, whatever arises, whether it be good or bad. Sangnyan, sang means like kuntu sangbo, samanta bhadra, whatever, always good. Here, good things can arise, you're getting praise and, you get, someone gave you offering on Sakadawa, or your aunt left you in her will, or people praise you and so forth. Whatever arises, whether it be good or bad, suffering, illness, incarceration, blame, whatever arises, I seek your blessings to transform them into a path, increasing the 2 bodhicittas. Okay. What are the 2 bodhicittas? I'm going to ask. I can't see everyone here. Barbara, what are the 2 bodhicittas? Do you know?
I think it was relative and ultimate.
Right. You could say relative bodhicitta or conventional bodhicitta
And ultimate, yeah.
and ultimate. So what's the difference?
One is like that all sentient beings are your mother type of desire to end all suffering. And the other is equanimity.
No.
No, I got it wrong.
Yeah, you started out good there. So there are two methods. We usually recognize two special methods to develop bodhicitta, but that's not, both of them are methods to develop the relative or conventional bodhicitta. So
Okay.
conventional bodhicitta is a thought, I must achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. So having developed compassion for sentient beings, aiming to achieve enlightenment, and then that's a wishing bodhicitta. And then if you actually engage in the practices that will bring that about, practicing the three Mahayana divisions of morality, ethics, or the six perfections, you might say, that's all called conventional bodhicitta. Ultimate bodhicitta, we talk about conventional truth and ultimate truth, this kind of has that sense. Ultimate bodhicitta means the realization of emptiness within the mind of someone who has developed conventional bodhicitta. So if you actually have conventional bodhicitta, if you're a bodhisattva, if you develop a realization of emptiness, that realization is called ultimate bodhicitta, because it's grasped by, held by, based on having within your mind stream the wish to achieve enlightenment for the sake of others. That's the difference between conventional and ultimate bodhicitta, right? So I seek your blessings to transform them into a path, increasing the two bodhicittas. So that is an incredible precept right there for our practice. Whatever you do every day, there may be whatever you, if you have to exhibit patience or you realize you have to be generous or whatever, think that whatever you're doing is a means to increase the two bodhicittas. You may be doing it, in the case of generosity, you may see it as an opportunity to create the merit to get closer to really eliminating the ultimate suffering of sentient beings by giving something now to eliminate their temporal suffering. In some circumstances when, if there's great fear or reluctance on your part, or like say, for instance, you lose enthusiasm, you think, there's too much to do, there's too much to learn, tenets and mind and mental factors and all this stuff, how can I learn this? Meditate on emptiness, recognizing that all of these things can be developed. As you look at the clear light nature of your mind, the mind is actually empty of inherent existence, that you can develop these qualities. So there are many, many ways of doing that, transforming adverse conditions, well, not just adverse conditions, whether it be good or bad, into a path increasing the two bodhicittas. So for instance, in this commentary that was originally written by Kanchen Geshe Gyaltsen, probably some of you may know, maybe not. There's in his commentary on this verse, he quotes a little a statement. If you happen to have that book, it's on page 274, from Lama Tsongkhapa. Lama Tsongkhapa said, furthermore, when others set out excellent cushions for me, honor me with respect and so forth, I don't need to give it much thought at all. Instead, I feel that these are all impermanent and are untrustworthy and are like illusory, deceptive seductions. kind of like the sirens, when Ulysses and the men were going, seductive deceptions. I have extremely powerful thoughts of aversion from the depths of my heart, as though they were insignificant appearances. And so this is talking about the sangwa, the good appearances. I have naturally felt this way since the time of my birth. Wow. I don't think I ever felt that way. So it shows the imprints Lama Tsongkhapa had in his mind. So when good things happen, especially when we think, this is the Kadampa Geshes would think, when good things happen, this mind of aversion means, ooh, this means my virtuous karma is ripening now. You don't try to seek out and say, oh, didn't I do a good job? Trying to draw out some praise, because that would be causing your accumulation of virtue to ripen in this insignificant, meaningless praise that you're trying to get. And when you're abused, on the other hand, you can feel some happiness, because instead of your virtues going down, your negativities are going down. So you feel happy when people insult you. Anyone feel that way? Anyone has got to that point in their practice? Had some example where you've had some experience where you were happy that you were abused?
Sometimes, but not all the time.
Okay, sometimes. Can you think of an example when you felt that way?
Somebody said I was an idiot or something like that, and I was like, that was your view, that's your viewpoint, and it was an opportunity for me to be patient with them and to seek to understand.
Right. That's one element, but here particularly thinking that this is the diminishing of your negative karma. You can think like that. Anyone else have any experience when you felt happy, or that you felt that, oh, I got that out of the way? Okay. Kim, what do you think? Jennifer?
I think for the most part, I'm still too attached to praise, but if like something really bad happens to me, nowadays I'm like, oh, that's great. Like,
Okay.
especially if I'm doing a lot of purification practice, I was like, oh, it could be a lot worse. Not all the time, but
Okay. Let's say, yeah, that's a good example. Say, for instance, if you feel some hardship making prostrations or offerings or whatever, but you see the benefits of that. So that suffering can be borne, but here has particular kind of idea there. Okay, where were we? Dorna sangnen nangwa chishayang chukuningpo tongne la Dorna sangnen nangwa chishayang chukuningpo togne nyamlengi. With the practice, namnyan means of the 5 forces, which is the heart of all dharmas. Here, chukun, it says all dharmas, it kind of means all dharma practices. Through the practice of the 5 powers, the quintessence of the entire dharma. Well, I would say, I'm not sure the entire dharma. Yeah, dharma practice. So for instance, when you do practice, there are various things you have to do. At the beginning, you want to have a strong motivation. You want to, as I've mentioned before, we said there are 3 times, right? The beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning, you want to have a good motivation. At the end, you want to make dedication. And in between, you want to, do whatever you're doing with concentration and correctly and so forth. So this has a little bit to do with that. So when we talk about these 5 forces, it's interesting, very good translator, what's his name? David, who did the Mahamudra, the big Mahamudra book recently, do you know?
David Gonzalez?
No, who wrote, what was it? Is Enlightenment Possible? You know, the second chapter.
David Jackson.
David Jackson, yeah. So David Jackson wrote a book on Mahamudra recently, and because the Mahamudra root text in the Gelugpa tradition was written by the first Panchen Lama, he also had his translation of Lama Chopa in there. And when it's talked about the 5 forces, he was not as familiar. I should have written him before. I had a pre-edition, and he said the 5 forces were like the 5 forces of the Buddha. You know, we talk about 5 forces and so forth. But here it has a very particular meaning, very important meaning in the Lojong. The 5 forces that are applicable during life, and the 5 forces at the time of death. So what they are, we could call them Pempeto. Pempa here means the force of propulsion. Sometimes people just say intent or motivation. Pempa means, you know, throwing, or, you know, like when you have Pempe, you know, throwing karma or something like that. Pempe top means the force of propulsion or intention. I've played around with maybe the force of inertia. Well, once something is moving, you know, if you can get something moving, it keeps on going. Has a little bit like that sense, or propulsion. What it means is a positive intention at the beginning of your practice. So I'll give more explanation in a second, but these are the 5. So the first one is the Pempe top, or the force of intention or propulsion. Gompe top, the force of familiarity. So once you've practiced something, you want to familiarize yourself with that again and again. I've mentioned in some other situations, some other times, that in one of Maitreya's texts, he says, the definition of meditation is to familiarize your mind with a virtuous state, to do it again and again. If you golf, or if you play tennis, or if you're a yoga fan, or whatever, you know, you do the same thing again and again every day, but it's sometimes you're getting familiar with it and it becomes much more easy to do. What was it people now are talking about the last couple of years? I can't remember if it was Richie Davidson's things about neuroplasticity or whatever, you know, that it takes, what is it? Who knows? How many hours when you become expert? Is it 30,000 hours or something? What is it? You know?
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours. Essentially, it's about the time that you would spend in meditation in a 3-year retreat. Interesting. You know, like how many hours practice the hockey players, the baseball players to become their, you know, ultimate. So it's through that familiarity that things become.
I'm not sure I understand.
That was my telephone. I must have said something with the SIRI in it. Let me turn that on. That does that sometimes. Has that happened to you? Or with Alexa or something? So the force of familiarity. The third one is Karpo Sabongito. So the force of the white seed, literally. So that means, in this case, when we talk about this lifetime, that means the creation of virtuous karma, creating white or virtuous seeds that acts as the cooperative causes to make realizations. So when you're doing any kind of practice, you want to have a good intention at the beginning, this propulsion, this, creating some inertia so that it goes through. You want to familiarize, to do it again and again, so it becomes second nature. You want to create virtuous karma during that. And then the fourth one is called Sunjingito. Some people, they don't like to do it. Actually, Sunjing literally means repudiation. So the force of repudiation, you know what repudiation means? Something in your own mind, you decide that you're not going to, this is wrong. Either you say it to someone or you repudiate your own instincts. So what it means is the state of mind that feels regret and makes a determination not to create negative karma. When you've created negative karma and repudiate that, that means I shouldn't have done that, to feel remorse and regret and apply the opponent forces. And in addition, to think that I should never have an instance of those kind of thoughts in the future. The force of repudiation. Sometimes people call it force of destruction. Sunjin kind of means like pulling out from the root, or you could say that. The force of atonement, I've seen it translated. And then the fifth force, did I give the right number or something? Pempe top, Gombe top, Karpo Sabongi top, Sunjingi top, yeah. And Mumpa Monlamgi top. So usually we just say the force of prayer, but here is saying the force of aspirational prayers, which can include dedication. Like when I said, at the beginning, intention, motivation, at the end, dedicating. What did I say? No, yeah. Motivation, dedication, and in the middle, creating virtuous karma, eliminating negative actions and instincts, and familiarizing, doing again and again. If you could do 10,000 hours of it, whatever. Make sense? Anyone have the? Yeah? So these are called, in the Lojong, these are called the 5 forces during this life. The same names are used for the 5 forces at the time of death. And we'll come to that in the Lama Chopa prayer, this Lamarin prayer, near the end, when it's talking about if you have not accomplished the essence of the path, realize clear light nature of the mind and so forth, developed a union of clear light and illusory body and so forth. At the time of death, grant me blessings to transform, transfer my consciousness to a pure land through a union of the 5 forces, these same 5 forces, but at the time of death, with the special instructions of how to achieve enlightenment. They say Lama Mengak, but it doesn't mean your own Lama. It's Lana Meba, it's what it means. So that will come a little bit later. They're essentially the same thing. At the time of death, for instance, to give away all your possessions before you're passing away, to create virtuous karma and so forth. So let me see here. So tempe top. So in his commentary, he says, for instance, to meditate, say, not falling under the influence of self-grasping, but instead to meditate on bodhicitta, thinking to do like this is called pempeto, the force of intention. So, thinking in this lifetime, I will not fall under whatever I'm capable of doing. I won't fall under the influence of self-grasping or self-cherishing thought. Remember, two different things, right? Self-grasping means a particular kind of ignorance that's believing, assenting to the existence of a findable self that's really there, that's the cause of all your delusions in a fundamental way. And self-cherishing thought is a mind that arises as a result of that thinks you're the most important thing and others are not as important, cherishing oneself more than others. That's what the example he gave for Pempetop. And then he said, so to recall that thought again and again, to become familiar with that is the force of familiarity. So these five forces, when it says is the essence, the quintessence of all Dharma practices, these are elements that you find in all Dharma practices. And then for the sabon, the karpo sabon gito. So this is very interesting. So for me, maybe not for you. So to dedicate merits that you create as to generate the mind of bodhicitta, semke dini, minyampa, whatever bodhicitta, whatever good thoughts that you have, that they may not diminish. Like the prayer that we say at the end, dedication prayer, Jangchup Semcho Grimposhe, Make Panam Nagyurchik, so that whatever semke, whatever bodhicitta that you've already created, not be diminished, and in addition to that, in order that it increase higher and higher, then Ngoshamgi Yuchu Choba, whatever offerings that you make, that you in your formal meditation, you arrange on your altar, flowers and incense and lamps and so forth, those that you mentally create when you imagine offering to the gurus and the merit field, various things. And in addition, the crops, the forests, Naxel, Neosinglu Metokang, so green grass and flowers and so forth. You can offer those things that even if they're owned by others, but especially if they're not owned by others, you can offer them to the guru. Did you know that? When you're walking around New York City, you can offer the fluorescent lights on Broadway, especially if they're attractive, or if you go to Central Park, or as was it Barbara was telling? No, Sunny was telling me, what was it called? Manhattan Hedge instead of Stonehenge. When the light these days, so the light goes down, where does it go? Broadway or wherever it goes, something like Stonehenge.
The setting sun can be seen in all of the streets, not the avenues, but all of the streets.
Oh, on the streets. Oh, there must be another time when there's the avenues. Okay, maybe that's the other time.
Yeah, avenues, streets are east-west.
So when Atisha was in Tibet, on his way to Tibet, he would stop the caravan sometime and he would sit down when he saw a beautiful landscape. And he would, it brought some pleasure to his mind. And so he would offer that to his guru Tara, his physical gurus this lifetime and so forth. So you don't have to only make offerings when you are in formal session, on your altar. You can offer things that are unowned and even things that are owned by others. It's not like you're stealing them. You can offer them to the Buddha because the person, you're not going to get arrested for that unless you cut them down and put them on your altar. Lama Yeshe used to say, whenever you go grocery shopping, the first thing you should do when you get home, take all the bags and you put them next to your altar or on your altar if you've got a big altar, and you offer them to the Buddha. And then, you wait, some time, not so long that the butter melts or the milk sours or something, and then you can put it in the refrigerator and use it. And Lama Yeshe used to say, the Buddha doesn't care. You've offered to the Buddha. He's not going to say, no, it's mine. There are some traditions in Tibetan Buddhism where the lamas, when we do puja, all of the things up on the altar, they say you don't distribute them. You have to just, they've been offered, so they're not yours. There's a certain sense to that, like sacrifice. But generally in the Mahayana tradition, it's considered that if you offer to the Buddha, that you can consume that afterwards. When you do nyungne, the nyungne, the fasting puja, if you take the tormas before you've offered to the Buddha out of incredible hunger and you eat them, that's not good. But after they've been offered, you can have them. Okay. So he's saying that like Atisha, all of these different things, owned and unowned, the harvests, beautiful forests that you see, or trees and so forth, green grass, meadows, flowers and so forth, clear water. When you see, beautiful water that's appealing and clean, the sun, the moon, the stars, constellations and so forth, you can offer that to the Buddha. So all of these things, whether owned or unowned, all of them, offering to the assembly of deities and lamas, is called Karpo Sabongito, the force of the white seed. Does that make sense? Parker, what do you think?
I'm a bit new to this, so I am trying to follow.
Okay.
Parts of this make sense.
The implication that parts of this don't make sense. Okay, that's okay. Okay. Do you need any clarification? Anything that you'd like to have clarified, or you'd?
Nothing specific enough to ask.
Okay.
I would use this as an opportunity to introduce myself to Mahayana practice.
Okay. 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 Good. So that's Sabongito, so Karpo Sabongito, so the white force of the white seed. And then the force of repudiation is to think the self-grasping and the self-cherishing in my continuum, because those are the principal enemies. Those are the principal things that we are trying to eliminate as Mahayana practitioners, not just the self-grasping, which in the Hinayana tradition, the Theravada tradition, is generally called tanha, thirst. They take that particular kind of mind at the time of death that propels you into a future lifetime as the main obstacle. Here in the Mahayana path, we take a more extensive kind of self-grasping and self-cherishing thought, because of the principal enemies. And you try to hold them as discordant for the mind. You recognize that they're not proper to have in your mind. Think to destroy them, that they would never arise for even a moment. And to destroy them, that is this thought of the force of repudiation. And then the force of aspirational prayers. You think that whatever virtuous practices that have been done, may all of them become causes of increasing the two bodhicittas. It's like what we were saying before. So those are called the 5 forces. So we've gotten somewhat through that. What did we say? Dorna Sangnem Nangwa Chisha, and whatever appearances arise, whether they be good or bad, with the practice of the 5 forces, the quintessence of the whatever, whether it be good or bad, seek your blessings to transform them into path, increasing the 2 bodhicittas, through the practice of the 5 powers, the quintessence of all Dharma, you say the entire Dharma or all Dharma practices, and thus to cultivate only mental happiness. Ide bashik gompa jengilo. So to cultivate only happiness. So what this is talking about is one of the measures of having trained the mind. So this in Mutra Dharma Bhadra's commentary, this verse is said to have 2 parts. So the first part, first 2 lines, we're talking about the first part, which was the practice in one lifetime. Sechik Nyamlen, the practice of one lifetime. How to practice in one lifetime, especially through the practice of the 5 powers and to transform them into increasing the 2 bodhicittas. The second part is, let's see what I say here, is the measure, what do we say, the qualification. When you have to have a certain level of proficiency to get a certificate, or to become a nurse or a doctor or a professor, or to graduate from college. So the measure might be having your certification or to be interviewed in some way. Here, the measure of having trained the mind is not someone else saying that you've trained the mind. There are various attributes. One of them, and this is not the only one of them that's mentioned here is that the mind is always happy, whatever happens. Even negative things happen. To what does it say here? To cultivate only mental happiness. So example of that in my own interaction with Genlam Rinpa. I don't know if any of you have heard of Genlam Rinpa. Genlam Rinpa, anyone heard of Genlam Rinpa? Paul has. Sunny has. Okay. No. Genlam Rinpa was not a geshe. They called him Gen, meaning teacher. He was a very great meditator who died not so long ago. How long? Maybe 8-10 years ago or something. Genlam Rinpa was the Lama who Alan Wallace brought to America, and they did how long was it? A year or 2-year Shine meditation in Washington State, which gave Alan Wallace the impetus to start his meditation program. Genlam Rinpa was a meditator in the mountains. He studied all of the texts, but he never stayed on for his geshe degree, but he put all his emphasis into practice. And I met him when he was living below Trijang Rinpoche's stupa in Dharamsala in Macaudganj. He was an ascetic, lived in this little place, and you could occasionally see him. And I invited him to Tushita Dharma Center up there to give some teachings once. And I asked him, some stories about his life. he said that, I think it was Gen Lama who said this. Now I'm not sure. Maybe it was Lama Yeshe who told me this story. That one of the lamas who was a contemporary of Lama Yeshe, who was the founder of the FPMT, who had taught us in the FPMT Chulen. Do you know what Chulen is? Anyone know what Chulen is? The meditators that live in isolation so that they don't have to go out and get food all the time. They distill these little kinds of pills from the pollen of very wholesome plants and other kinds of elements, and they live on those. They'll just eat those pills, 1 or 2 or 3 a day with some water. Of course, they get quite thin. And chu means essence, like we said when we said no chu. Chu means essence or contents. Len means taking. So they take some time for the body to acclimatize to that, to be able to take the essence, everything they need from these. So this one Lama had taught us that. He was also a very great practitioner. One story he told was that he, once when he was in India on a train station in Pathankot, very, not a pleasant place to spend your time. And he was beaten up by some thugs and on the platform, and his possessions were taken, and the police were called, and they grabbed him thinking he was one of the culprits, and they put him in jail, and they beat him, and even though he was not. This may sound familiar to you if you're like Cynthia, maybe Asian American. Cynthia, you're from Asia? Your heritage, your family? Okay.
I'm from the Philippines.
Philippines, yeah. So, sometimes people don't do anything wrong, but because the police get it in their mind, you're bad or something like that. So he went to see the Dalai Lama afterwards, and the Dalai Lama asked him, what happened? How did you do? And he said, all this time, my mind was happy. I never felt any kind of negativity, only happy mind. And Dalai Lama said, oh, that's a sign of training the mind. That's, in this case, this is a measure of having trained the mind. When the mind is always happy, whatever happens. So in the Lojong teachings, I didn't underline here. There are a couple of other, when we talk about the measure of having trained the mind. Do I see easily? Or do I have to leave? You can find this in the Lojong. Okay, I can't find it right now. So when you are able to practice even when distracted, that's another one of the signs of having trained the mind. Even if something's happening and you're still able to keep your emphasis on training your mind in the 2 bodhicittas because of familiarity. That's another measure of having trained the mind. So this verse talks about a couple of those points. In short and brief, whatever appears, whatever appearances arise, be they good or bad, through the application, through the practice of the 5 forces that we just talked about, which are the quintessence, the essence of all Dharma practices, grant me blessings to transform whatever the visions are, be they're good or bad, into enhancing the 2 bodhicittas and as a result of that, having practiced, sort of a measure of having trained that is to always cultivate a happy mind. I remember when I was at Manjushri Institute, this would have been in, oh, I don't know, 78, 79. And sometimes I was unhappy. Teacher there, I will leave unnamed, so Paul would know who I'm talking about. He would say, no need to have unhappy mind. No need to have unhappy mind. So, sometimes we dwell on things that cause us to be unhappy. Someone has offended us or had left us, or they weren't affectionate enough to us, or we've lost someone, our friends are lost, our baby left me, my baby done left me, whatever. If you fixate on that, you familiarize with that, you think they said this, then they said that, then they said that, you're meditating on negativity. You don't have to do that. You don't need to have an unhappy mind. You're just making yourself unhappy. So if you recognize that, just to think, to cultivate a happy mind, think, I don't have to pay attention to that. I have a perfect human rebirth, numberless future lives in the future, and so forth. I'm going to try to cultivate a positive attitude, work for the sake of others, and cultivate a happy mind. Okay. So then the next verse, I'll give a little introduction, maybe even get through it a little bit. Jorwa Shidan Tempe Tapkeki. There we go, 98. Through the skillful means of possessing the four practices, Jorwa Shidan Tempe Tapkeki, Tela Kangduk Gomla Jorwadang, joining whatever happens temporarily, whatever I encounter into meditation. Lojong Damsik Lapche Nyamlengi, with the practice of the commitments and trainings of Lojong. What does it say here? Practicing the commitments and precepts of thought transformation, Lojong. Grant me blessings to make this life of leisure and endowment highly meaningful. Is that in there somewhere? Through skill, may I make this life of freedoms and richness greatly meaningful. So we have a life of, in our original motivation at the beginning, I've mentioned every week, to think that we have this life of leisure and endowment now that allows us to do these things, to hear the Dharma, to be inspired, to recognize that we can eliminate our faults, to generate positive things, to benefit others, benefit all society. You don't expect it immediately, but you're creating the cause to eliminate the suffering of all sentient beings. That's the meaning of making this life of freedom and richness greatly meaningful, not in the meaningless activities of this life. I think it was the first Karmapa, I'm not sure, I think it was the first Karmapa who said, at the time of death, the vision of this life is like last night's dream. At the time of death, all of these things in this lifetime just seem like, when you wake from a dream, it's gone, it's almost even hard to remember. There might be some little imprint in your mind, but it's over, you realize it was meaningless. So at the time of death, the vision of this life is like last night's dream. All meaningless actions are like ripples on a lake. Meaningless actions means the actions that are aimed only for the happiness of this lifetime, not thinking of others, not thinking of future lives and so forth. Like the ripples, ripples on a lake, they get lower. As they go over time, they become indiscernible. whereas meaningful actions will have some effect over time. So, Jowa Shidan Tempe Tapkeki, by the skillful means of possessing the four practices. What's meant by this? Jowa Shi is, again, language that I think in David Jackson's translation, he found some other Jorwas somewhere, but in the Lojong, this means four particular kinds of practices. That means creating virtuous karma. Say, for instance, when you notice in your own lifetime, things are not going well, things are stolen, people are criticizing you, to create virtuous karma so that in the future, you will have the things you want. You won't be lacking in resources. That you will get respect by respect. Let's say, for instance, we create virtuous karma by respecting others now. You create the karma to receive respect in the future and so forth. So one is to create virtuous karma, which acts as a cause, not only for your own cooperative conditions, but act as the substance to make realizations. That's the first Jowa, the creation of virtuous karma. Second one is the elimination of negative karma, through applying the four opponent forces. Four opponent forces? How many forces? 5 opponent forces? 4 opponent forces, right? Who knows? Who knows the 4 opponent forces? What is it? Say again? Not Jorwish, the four practices are not the 4 opponent forces. What are the 4 opponent forces? Philip, do you know? I can only see you.
I can't hear the middle word. The 4 what forces?
Opponent forces.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Sunny, do you know?
Reliance, and then regret, and then the remedy, and then the resolve.
Okay, so what does that mean? Reliance, yeah. So reliance means that when you fall down, if you created negative karma, in the Gelugpa tradition, usually interpreted this way, that you have to rely on the ground to get up again. You have to, when I get out of my chair, I have to push, have to rely on the ground to get up, right? So 2 ways of creating negative karma with respect to sentient beings and respect to the triple gem. So with respect to the triple gem, the way to get up is to take refuge. And with respect to sentient beings, when you've created negativities with respect to sentient beings, is to work for their welfare, their ultimate welfare, by developing bodhicitta. So essentially the first opponent force means taking refuge and generating bodhicitta again and again. Even taking refuge, you might think, oh, how could that get rid of problems? When I was in India once, we were visiting with Kirti Senchab Rinpoche, one great Lama who was a teacher of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Incredible Lama. I mentioned before when we were talking about Tonglen, when he had liver disease at the end of his life, he said this was a chance for him to practice now. So there was one monk, a Spanish monk, who was the former boyfriend of one of our nuns. He had become a monk, but he started exhibiting strange activity, like he would start to do Tai Chi, which he'd never done before. He would try to meditate too long without eating, without having created virtuous karma and so forth. And he started to go a bit crazy. When he was at, it's called Jigsurungwa, the frightening charnel ground, one of the 8 great charnel grounds. we were visiting there with Kurti Senshab, and he started going crazy, and he started beating his old girlfriend and screaming, and he was running toward a cliff, and he was about to jump off the end, and we got him, and we said some prayers. Finally, Kurti Senshab Rinpoche, first he came, we were holding down this guy, and Kurti Senshab Rinpoche said, first of all, he said wrathful mantras, to get rid of whatever spirit influence was influencing him. That didn't work. And I think that was Rinpoche's intention, was to show us. Then he said, Om Mani Padme Hum, one mala of Om Mani Padme Hum, blew on some water, poured the water into the person's mouth, and he went, ah. That was the thing that finally got him to go down. So later, when he visited, this monk was brought to Kurti Senshab Rinpoche for instruction. Rinpoche said, the most important thing to do is for you to take refuge again and again, all the time, because taking refuge protects you from negative influences, also creates virtuous karma so that you can't be affected by these negative influences. So of the four opponent forces, refuge and bodhicitta, the force of reliance, the strongest of the forces is the force of is the power of remorse, regret. It doesn't mean feeling guilty. It means recognizing that you've created negative karma that is going to will ripen on you in the future, and to feel, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. However you express yourself. There was one monk at Deer Park, I remember, used to say, oh man, when he was. So force of remorse, force of regret. The force of resolve, I think whoever had said those would mean resolving not to do the negative action again in the future. Like we say, New Year's resolution, right? Here, whether you can resolve the rest of your life never to do that, that's probably not a skillful way to do it, because probably you're going to do it again. So to resolve in the next minute, I'm not going to say swear words or bad words, or I'm not going to have evil thoughts, or I'm not going to fall prey to my lust or my attachment or whatever, and then extend that time over time. Force of reliance, force of regret, force of, I say, power of resolve. What's the fourth one? What am I forgetting here? Who had said the four?
Remedy?
Remedy, yeah. So for instance, when you've created negative karma, even if you purified most of the other negative results for the future, and in fact, these four opponent forces are related with the four effects that we talked about earlier. I know we're just reached the end. I just want to finish this thought, if you'd be patient with me. You want to create virtuous karma and dedicate that virtuous karma that in the future, when the negative, whatever residue of the negative karma might arise, it will be mixed with this virtuous karma. So maybe in the future, you'll get arrested, but because of virtuous karma, for something, because of negative karma that you didn't completely purify, but because of virtuous karma that you dedicated to be aligned with that, as a remedy to that, that you will be given a light sentence, or your transgression will be forgiven, or whatever. Different explanations like that. So, yeah. Jowa Shidan Tempe Tapkeki Tela Kangdu Gomla Jowadang. So to join whatever happens temporarily to meditation. This is one of the precepts of the training of the mind. Lojug, Lojong, Damsik, Labche, Nyamlengi, Deljor Donchen, Chepar Jingilo. So I'll finish this next time, but just in brief, there are certain commitments you take when you're practicing the the training of the mind, and certain advices. And amongst those things are, say, for instance, the precept to always train even in words, just to give an example. So to think as you're putting the cans on the shelf in the supermarket, if you're working in the supermarket, to think, like this, may I arrange all sentient beings into the state of, the Pure Lands or something. When Lama Yeshe, I think I told you before, when Lama Yeshe first came to the United States to give a course back around 1974, when he came back, he said the one student that he thought had made the most outstanding progress in his Dharma practice since he'd been to Kopan was someone who was work in the grocery store, putting the cans on the shelves, and he always practiced the lojong, even in words, So that's what's being talked about here. I will leave it at that. We'll continue with this verse next time. We're still in this incredible month of Sakadawa when the Buddha was born in 1 year, and then another year in this month he achieved enlightenment, and then years later he passed away in this month. He wasn't born, attained enlightenment, and died in the same month on the same day. There were many years in between, but this month still has many days left, and the karma is said to be multiplied during this month. So as much as you can, try to put these practices in, put these, teachings into practice and create virtuous karma dedicated to the welfare of all. So let's do a short dedication. We motivated at the beginning. We tried to pay attention in the middle. We created virtuous karma, the force of the white seed, and try to, feel regret about negative actions we've done. We familiarize with these things. Now, the force of prayer means, in this case, due to these merits that I've created today, as a result of them, in whatever way they ripen, may they become the cause of my continued spiritual development from life to life, up to and including enlightenment. Not only to enlightenment, but all of the steps along the way, may these act as the sustenance, the cooperative conditions, and the very essence of the sustenance, like the water and sunlight and fertilization of the seeds that to sprout of my realizations, so that I can achieve a state of full enlightenment from which I can effortlessly and spontaneously lead all sentient beings out of suffering without error, set them into that very same state. Thank you very much. So have a good week, and hopefully, we have a class next week, right? Okay, so there were a couple of weeks when we'd have one class and we had a week off. I think next week we have a class. So save up your
next week.
Yeah. So save up your questions, unless there's anything right now. Anyone want to get off their chest? Okay, so have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, George.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Venerable.
Venerable.
Thank you so much.